Hello, and welcome to your tutorial on using the high-pass filter to sharpen or soften a photograph. We already know that in Photoshop we have the toolbar, and that has two options for sharpening and softening. We have the blur tool that looks like a drop of water, and like any tool in our toolbar, we can go up here and change the size of the brush. We can change the strength of what we're doing. We can even change the style of brush. What our blur tool does is it simply softens the edges of pixels so that we get a blurred effect there. Now we also have in the same tab of the toolbar the sharpen tool. It looks like a triangle. What the sharpen tool does is it isolates individual pixels. It clarifies the edges so it can give a little bit of sharpening to something that looks slightly blurry or out of focus. I very rarely use these tools. Instead, I use the high-pass filter to sharpen or a high-pass filter to do an ultra-soft effect on a photograph. Let me show you that process. Select your image and do any post-processing. You can see in this image of leaves, I worked with color, levels, I cropped, I used the burn tool, and I worked with hue saturation. I have the image that I want now. So to apply a nice consistent high-pass sharpening filter, what I have to do first is duplicate the layer. I go up to my layers menu and go to the second item, which is duplicate layer, and I'm going to name that high pass. You don't have to name your layers. It just helps when you're working in multiple layers. Now, of course, we want to be able to see our layers by coming up to the layers menu here. And we see our original background and the high pass. Now, I'm going to come up to the filter menu, and I'm going to come all the way down to other and then over to high pass. And that's going to bring up my high pass window. For sharpening, I probably want an effect that's somewhere between 10 and 20 pixel radius. I can get this by toggling up and down here, or I can go into that box, highlight it, and then on my keyboard type in the number I want. So I'm going to give this a 20. And you'll see I did that on the high pass layer, not on the original background. So now we have to go up to our layer blending options here. Right up in our layers menu, we have our layer blending options. I got that simply by clicking the down arrow. I'm going to go down to overlay, overlay, and look what happens. Look at the immediate sharpness that that image has. Here's the original, and that's with the high pass overlay. If I like what I've done and I'm ready to keep this, then I have to come back and make these layers into one single image. I do that by merging them or flattening them. I go up to my layer menu and I come down to flatten image. Once I've done that, my image is complete. I can print it, I can put it in my portfolio. I'm ready to save it. So let's go through that process once more. Again, I did all of my pre-processing. I worked on levels, hue saturation, selective color, and changed my image size on this before I was ready to apply my high pass. I go to layers and make a duplicate layer that I name high pass. I reveal my layers in my layer window. Once again, I go to filter, and I'm going to go down to other, and I'm going to go to high pass, and I'm going to toggle up and down. Let's really overdo this one. Let's take it up to about 35. And click OK. Then I come to my blending options and my layers over here, and click overlay. Now, as soon as I clicked that and the overlay sharpening was applied, you can see that this image is over sharpened. It's so sharp that it's started to look grainy or pixelated. There's the original, and there's the sharpened. So instead of walking through the whole process again, I can simply go up to my layer opacity right here and dial that down. I can grab the toggle and just dial it down till I get the effect I want. If I dial that all the way down to 0, there would be no sharpening at all. So I'm just going to play with it till I think right about there is the amount of sharpening that I want. And when I've got it, then I'm ready to flatten those layers by going to Layer, down to Flatten Image, and then I can save it, print it, put it in my portfolio. So that's how we use the high pass filter to create an overall sharpening. Now we can do just the opposite with a high pass filter, and we can do an ultra soft effect. Look at the bokeh effect on this, the blur around the peony. I'll show you how to do that. This is an image, a landscape from Seward, Alaska, and you can see in my history that I've done a lot of post-processing. I worked with colors, I worked with exposures, I did some dodging, and I've got the image I like. I'm going to follow the same process that we did with the sharpening, but with one small change. Again, I'm going to layer, I'm going to duplicate it, I'm going to call it high pass, and click OK. I'm going to reveal my layer window. I'm going to go up to Filter, down to Other, and across to High Pass. Now this time I'm going to go really high because the ultra softening effect you can go very high on. You can go 30, 40, even 50. The higher you go, the more softening effect you get. I'm going to click OK. Now here's where the change in the process comes. We need to tell Photoshop to do exactly the opposite of what it expects to do with a high pass. Here's how we do that. We go up to our menu bar, we go to Image, down to Adjustments, and then over to Invert. What that does is it creates an opposite of the image we've just done. Let's do that again. We go to Image, Adjustments, Invert. So now that we have inverted the photo, we can apply our overlay blend. When I hit overlay, look what happens. There's our original, the before, and our after. See how soft, smooth, almost mystical the water, the sky, the image looks. That's what the ultra smoothing effect will do. Now in this image, I really like what happened with the sky and with the water, but I don't like what happened in the landscape and the grasses and the bush here. So I'm going to remove that from the high pass layer by getting my eraser tool. And again, we know we can toggle the size of it up and down and the strength of it anywhere from 100 down to 1%. I'm going to keep this at 100% and make sure I'm in my high pass layer here, and I'm just going to erase the high pass layer. So you see how we're revealing the original image behind that. We're removing any trace of the high pass from this. So I'm keeping my original clarity and focus in the foliage here. I want to give that a quick shot. I want to come in, there's a log in the water here. I want to reveal my original clarity in that. Oops, I'm going to step back one in my history because I went too far with that. Here we go. Now we can see that this is what's left of our high pass layer. A couple more places I can erase. Once I've erased everything that I want to erase in the high pass layer, then I can go into my blending. Let's check it now and see if we got everything out that we want out. Yep, that looks good. So now I go into my blending modes, and I've already done the overlay, so I'm good there. So I can go into my layers and flatten my image. Let's look at the before and after on that. Here was the before. There was the after when the whole thing had the soft on it, and then we erased and flattened the image. So that's using the high pass filter to either sharpen or soften a photograph. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call or to submit a question on your Moodle page. I'll keep this up on Moodle for the rest of the semester.